imagine for a second that you live in this really large condominium complex. You've been there a few years, you enjoy the amenities, but the building is, well, it's definitely showing its age.
Right, like the elevators are constantly breaking down, trapping people on the 15th floor.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the roof is leaking directly onto the marble in the lobby. Or the basement parking floods every single time it rains. So, it is time for a massive structural overhaul.
Oh, absolutely. It's unavoidable.
So you decide to attend the annual general meeting. You walk into that familiar, slightly overly air-conditioned common room. The fluorescent lights are just buzzing, and it is packed.
Every plastic chair is taken, I bet.
Oh, yeah. People are leaning against the walls, arms crossed. It's tense at first, but after, 3 grueling hours of debate over budgets and contractors, the voting finally happens, and it is unanimous.
Wow. Unanimous.
Yeah. Every single hand in that room goes up. Everyone agrees to fund this multi-million-dollar building upgrade. The chairman bangs the gavel. People are applauding out of sheer relief. And you go home thinking, the matter's completely settled. Scaffolding is going to go up next week.
Right. It feels like a done deal.
Exactly. But, and this is the wild part, what if, say, 6 months down the line, a judge issues a ruling stating that the entire meeting and every single decision made in it, including that unanimous victorious vote, never legally happened?
Yeah, that mirage is actually a daily reality in condominium law, and it catches people completely off guard.
I would be furious.
Of course. You walk away from that room feeling this, the weight of a democratic consensus. You really believe you've witnessed a concrete mandate. But the courts view condo governance through an entirely different lens.
Really? How so?
Well, they don't care how many hands went up on the day. They just don't. They care exclusively about the invisible foundation beneath that meeting. If the administrative data used to summon those people into that room is flawed in any way, the entire foundation crumbles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it takes every single resolution, every budget approval, and every signed contract down with it.
That is terrifying. So today, our goal for this deep dive is to basically strip away that illusion of the meeting room, right? We're going to show you, the listener, the hidden administrative machinery that actually dictates condominium power.
Exactly. We're relying on a highly detailed legal guide today, alongside a really comprehensive breakdown of crucial case law that focuses specifically on juristic persons.
Right, because if you are a co-owner or a resident or investor, you need to understand this. Our mission is to arm you with this ultimate administrative shield. We want to give you the knowledge to understand exactly how your building should be run.
Because honestly, the real decisions are being made long before anyone even sets foot in that meeting room. Think about the mechanics of, a flawed election.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. A landslide victory means absolutely nothing if the polling station was using a voter registry from 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, if people who moved away are voting or new people can't.
Exactly. If a fraction of the actual eligible voters were never even notified because their addresses were recorded incorrectly, the result is inherently illegitimate. And the courts apply this exact same logic to condominiums.
So when a dispute pops up, the judge isn't looking at the whiteboard tally.
Not at all. The judge looks at the filing cabinets. They want to know which version of the co-owner registry was used, who approved the updates to that registry, or the invitations mailed to the specific legally mandated addresses.
Right.
If the juristic person, the legal entity managing the condo, cannot trace those administrative steps perfectly, they lose the case, period.
Okay, that really shifts the entire perspective. So if we abandon the idea that the meeting room is the starting line, where do we actually start? How do you build a legally bulletproof condo decision?
Well, before you can count a vote or even book a room, you have to establish the absolute legal truth of who holds the power in that building on any given day.
And finding out who the real owner is, I'm guessing that's not as simple as knocking on the door.
Oh, definitely not. Establishing that truth requires bypassing this really massive common misconception regarding residency versus ownership. You have to look at specific property-level documentation.
Let me jump in here and play devil's advocate for a second, because if I'm a new building manager, I'm thinking, I have a very easy shortcut here.
Uh-oh. Let's hear it.
In Thailand, we have this official Blue House registration booklet, right? The Toror 14.
Yes, the infamous Toror 14.
Right. It's government issued. It's got an official crest on it. It lists the address of the unit and the names of the people living inside. Why wouldn't a manager just simply pull the data from those official booklets to build their invite list? It seems totally logical.
It seems logical, but using that booklet is actually a fatal administrative error. And the crazy thing is it happens constantly. We really have to separate the concept of inhabiting a space from the concept of owning a fraction of the building's legal entity.
Okay, so living there doesn't equal owning it.
Exactly. The house registration, that blue book, merely tracks demographics for the state. It just shows who physically sleeps there.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, the name printed in that book could belong to a tenant on a 6-month lease. It could be the legal owner's university-aged kid. It could be an elderly relative who moved in for medical care. Or honestly, even a friend who just needed an official address to open a local bank account.
Oh, right. People do that all the time. But none of those people have any financial stake in a multi-million-dollar roof repair.
Zero financial stake. And therefore, zero legal voting rights. If management uses that house registration to mail out meeting invitations, they are actively handing voting power to tenants and guests.
While totally ignoring the actual owner.
Exactly. The real owner might live in another province or even another country, a meeting built on that tour. 14 data is illegitimate from the absolute moment those envelopes are printed.
So where do they find the true owner then?
They have to interrogate a completely different set of documents, specifically the ORCOR 1.
The ORCOR 1, that's the official condo title deed, right?
Yes. They need to monitor the land office for recent transfer registrations. They have to review official inheritance decrees if an owner passes away. They even have to check name change certificates.
So it's essentially tracking the chain of title, not doing a local census.
It is entirely about the chain of title. The juristic person has to take all those legal ownership documents and construct their own internal master database. And that master database is known as the ORCOR.
Ah, the ORCOR 2. This document seems to be the center of gravity for everything we're talking about today. How does this master registry actually function in the real world?
So the ORCOR 2 is the official co-owner registry, and it is, without exaggeration, the single most vital organ of the juristic person. It dictates every mathematical and logistical aspect of a meeting.
Because condo voting isn't just one person, one vote, is it?
No, not at all. Your voting weight is calculated based on the exact fractional size of your unit compared to the total common area.
Oh, so if I own a penthouse, my vote weighs more than someone in a studio.
Precisely. And the ORCOR 2 holds those specific calculations. It determines the quorum, how many people need to show up to make the meeting valid. It generates the final authoritative voter list, and it dictates the exact locations where legal notices must be delivered.
So it's basically the DNA of the building's governance. If the ORCOR 2 is corrupted, literally every single action the building takes is mutated.
That is the core of the issue, yeah. The golden rule here is that this registry must exist in a state of perpetual, strict accuracy.
Perpetual accuracy. That sounds exhausting.
It is. But if, say, an investor buys a unit on a Wednesday, that change in legal ownership must be reflected in the ORCOR 2 immediately. If the management office lags behind and calls a meeting on a Friday using Thursday's outdated registry, they have just disenfranchised the new owner.
Man, so every vote tallied at that meeting is legally compromised.
Exactly, because the foundation was flawed.
Okay, that brings up a massive logistical hurdle, though. You mentioned the ORCOR. 2 dictates where the invitations go. But let's look at the reality of modern real estate. I live in a building where, half the owners seem to be overseas investors.
Very common.
Right, or people living in different provinces who just rent their units out. If the management office just slides an envelope under the door of Unit 4B, the actual owner is never going to see it.
Which is exactly why the law is highly specific about the priority of contact information. The sources emphasize that the address an owner explicitly provides to the juristic person for contact purposes entirely supersedes the physical address of the condo unit.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it supersedes the official house registration, too.
Well, that mechanism makes total sense. I mean, if I buy a condo in Bangkok, but I live in Chiang Mai, I don't want legal notices piling up on a doormat 300 miles away, especially if I have a tenant who might just chuck my mail in the trash.
Exactly, and the courts recognize that reality. The law mandates that if an owner registers a specific mailing address, like their corporate office or their primary residence in another city, the juristic person is legally obligated to use that specific address.
So just sending it to the condo unit out of convenience is a breach of duty.
Yes, a massive breach.
I am putting myself in the shoes of a building manager right now, and this sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It's not easy, that's for sure.
I mean, imagine managing an 800-unit complex. You have this constant churn of property flipping, inheritances, foreign buyers, people getting married, changing their names, moving. The sheer volume of incoming data would be overwhelming. How does a management team avoid drowning in this bureaucracy and, accidentally disenfranchising someone?
It requires a major shift in mindset. They have to transition from a passive filing system to an active, unbreakable administrative protocol. The sources outline a really rigorous protocol for updating the master database, and it's heavily reliant on the concept of an audit trail.
An audit trail. Okay, I always picture an audit trail like the black box on a commercial airliner.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, like when a flight is cruising at 30,000 feet, nobody is thinking about the black box. But the second there is a catastrophic failure, or in our context, a massive lawsuit over a contested condo election, the judge is going straight for that black box. They want to see every single input.
The black box perfectly captures the court's approach here. When a dispute lands in front of a judge, the juristic person must be able to defend every single keystroke in their database.
Every keystroke.
Every single one. For every alteration to the OR core, 2, the management must be able to answer 4 immovable questions.
Okay, what are they?
First, who changed the data? Second, on what exact date and time was it changed?
Right, so the time scam.
Exactly. Third, what specific legal document triggered the change? And fourth, who authorized the final update?
Oh, wow. So if a resident walks into the lobby on a Tuesday afternoon, hands over a fresh title deed, and says, hey, I just bought Unit 502, the administrative clerk cannot just toss that deed into a pending tray and say, cool, I'll update the Excel sheet when I have free time next month.
Doing that creates a massive, ticking legal vulnerability. Just think about the implications of a delay like that. The clerk leaves the deed in a tray, right? 2 weeks go by. Then the board decides to call an urgent meeting to approve a new security contract. The administrative staff pulls the data for the invitations, but because the tray hasn't been processed, they pull the old owner's data.
Oh, no. So the invitation goes to the previous owner.
Yes. And the new owner, who legally holds the voting rights now, is sitting in Unit 502, completely unaware that a major financial decision is being made regarding their property.
And when that new owner eventually finds out and sues, the judge pulls the black box. The judge sees the new title deed was physically handed to management on Tuesday the 4th, but the meeting notices went out on the 18th using the old data.
And at that exact moment, the management's defense completely collapses. The audit trail proves their negligence. This is why a pristine database isn't just, good housekeeping. It is the absolute prerequisite for any legal action the condo board wishes to take.
It's foundational.
It really is. In fact, generating a flawless, finalized, eligible receiver list is a mandatory step that must occur before the condo board can even draft a resolution to hold a meeting.
Wait, let's explore that sequence for a second. Are you saying the guest list has to be absolutely finalized before the board even decides on the date and agenda for the meeting?
Logically and legally, yes.
Yes.
You cannot formally call a legal gathering of a specific group of stakeholders if you haven't definitively established who those stakeholders are.
Right.
The board must rely on the verified or core, too, to understand the current voting weights and the ownership landscape before they can establish the parameters of the meeting.
I feel like in reality, 90% of condominium boards do this completely backward.
Oh, they do. All the time.
Right. Like a group of committee members sit in a room, they get frustrated about the break-in elevator, and someone says, let's hold a general meeting on the 25th of next month to vote on a new elevator. They pass a resolution, set the agenda, and then they turn to the property manager and say, okay, figure out who lives here now and send them all an invite.
Which is precisely how these meetings end up being voided in court. The foundation must precede the architecture. The board cannot authorize a meeting without relying on the verified data first. Once that resolution is passed, the management office enters what the sources call the final pre-flight check.
Okay, so what are they checking for at that stage? If the database is pristine, shouldn't they just hit print and send?
They're pausing to verify the absolute finality of the data before it becomes legally binding. They have to ask, has any new ownership document been submitted in the last 24 hours? Have we processed every single change of address request?
Making absolutely sure nothing is sitting in that pending tray.
Exactly. Are we absolutely certain we are using the customized contact addresses and not just defaulting to the physical unit numbers? Because once those envelopes enter the postal system, the juristic person is permanently locked into the data they chose to use.
Okay, that brings us to the physical execution. Having a perfectly curated database of legal owners and their preferred addresses is fantastic, but it's entirely theoretical until you actually manage to communicate with them.
Right.
Mail gets lost, Couriers deliver to the wrong building. People claim they never saw an envelope. How does a juristic person transition from having perfect data to having a perfect legal defense?
They do it by treating the mailing process not as an administrative chore, but as the construction of an evidence vault.
An evidence vault. I like that.
Yeah, sending the invitation is a highly defensive legal act. The management is essentially building a fortress around the impending meeting. They don't just drop letters in a mailbox and hope for the best.
That what do they do?
They have meticulously tracked the finalized receiver list, the exact delivery method utilized for every single owner, the dispatch dates, the postal registration tracking numbers, and they even have to carefully catalog any returned or bounced mail.
Okay, I want to push back on the legal philosophy here regarding the burden of proof. Let's assume I am a highly litigious, disgruntled co-owner. I hate the current committee, I hate their plan to spend millions on the elevators, and I want to destroy their meeting. So I go to court and I claim, Your Honor, this meeting is a sham. They intentionally never sent me an invitation, thereby locking me out of the vote.
Okay, a very common scenario.
Right. Under normal legal circumstances, he who asserts must prove. Shouldn't the burden of proof be on me to prove that they didn't send it?
It's an excellent question, and it highlights a really unique dynamic in administrative law. While the court will certainly examine evidence presented by both parties, the operational expectation placed upon the juristic person is immense.
Why is that?
We have to consider information asymmetry. The management holds all the keys to the data. They control the ledger, the mailroom, the budget. The individual owner does not. Therefore, the burden of defense shifts heavily onto the juristic person.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they are acting in a fiduciary capacity, and they're expected to have an ironclad documented defense ready to present the very moment they are challenged.
So the judge isn't going to demand I prove a negative, that I didn't get a letter. The judge is going to turn to the condo management and say, he claims you excluded him. Prove to me that you executed your administrative duty.
Exactly. The judge will demand the receipts, and if the management team can calmly open their evidence vault, produce the exact time-stamped version of the OR core, they relied upon, show the ledger proving your ownership was recorded correctly, and then hand the judge a registered postal receipt showing an envelope was dispatched to the exact customized address you provided. The dispute is effectively neutralized.
Case closed.
Pretty much. The juristic person demonstrates they acted in perfect faith according to the law. The fact that the post office might have lost it, or that you threw it away without opening it, no longer invalidates the meeting, because the juristic person fulfilled their statutory obligation to send it to the correct coordinates.
It becomes incredibly clear why some buildings feel chaotic and others feel stable. If you live in a condominium where the management office can't seem to find a simple postal receipt, or they're constantly confused about who owns what, you're likely living in a building paralyzed by internal litigation.
Oh, absolutely. Decisions get tied up in court for years simply because the paperwork is sloppy. Sloppy paperwork isn't just an annoyance, it is a weapon. It's waiting to be used by anyone who wants to disrupt the governance of the building.
So true transparency isn't demonstrated by smiling faces at the annual meeting?
No, it is demonstrated by the quiet, meticulous, heavily documented handling of data weeks before anyone even shakes hands.
Okay, we've established what the perfect timeline looks like. We understand the audit trail, the OR core, the evidence vault. But the sources we're reviewing detail a specific, highly dramatic scenario, what they literally refer to as a legal disaster.
Yes.
It's a hypothetical timeline that perfectly illustrates how a juristic person can unwittingly plant a bomb under their own meeting. Let's walk through this day 1, day 3, day 5 scenario.
This scenario is the textbook definition of how to destroy a condominium resolution. Let's imagine the management office is stressed, they are understaffed, and the annual general meeting is rapidly approaching.
Pretty standard reality for most offices.
Right. So on day 1, they decide to just get the invitations out of the way. They print the labels based on whatever data is currently sitting in the computer system, stuff the envelopes, and hand them to the post office.
Okay, so on day 1, the physical notices are out the door. The legal act of notification has been initiated.
Yes. But then on 2 days later, the administrative clerk finally finds the time to process a stack of documents that have been sitting on their desk. They update the OR 2 registry with several new title deeds, acknowledging that ownership of several units actually changed hands the previous week.
Okay, stop right there. They updated the master list after the invitations were already mailed.
It gets worse.
Oh, boy.
On day 5, the clerk goes through their emails and processes a handful of change of address forms, updating the preferred contact coordinates for several absentee owners.
That sequence is structurally insane.
It really is.
That's like a military commander firing a heat-seeking missile on Monday and then sitting down at a computer on Wednesday to program the target coordinates. Where did the Monday missile go?
Exactly.
It went to wherever the default coordinates were pointing. It went to the wrong target.
The heat-seeking missile analogy is incredibly apt here. The management fired the legal notices into the void, completely blind to the actual current reality of the building's ownership. And sadly, this happens constantly.
How do they even justify that to themselves?
Management teams rationalize it by thinking, well, the meeting isn't for another 3 weeks. I'll get the mail out today, and I'll clean up the database by Friday. It all comes out in the wash.
But the law doesn't care about their internal scheduling issues. Legally, what is the status of that day one mailing?
Legally, the day one mailing relied entirely on outdated data. And here is the fatal legal consequence. Sending legally binding notices while relying on data that the juristic person knows or legally should know is incomplete, is viewed by the courts as an act of bad faith.
Bad faith.
Yes, it is procedural illegitimacy.
Let's play devil's advocate again. If I'm the manager, I go before the judge and I say, Your Honor, I manage 800 units. I have 2 staff members. We were 2 days late updating a spreadsheet. But our intent was good. We were just trying to give everyone as much notice as possible by mailing early. Surely a 2-day administrative delay doesn't invalidate a multi-million-dollar contract.
A judge will look at that manager and explain a fundamental principle of law. You cannot retroactively cure a defective notice.
You can't fix the past.
Exactly. Updating the registry on day 3 does not wash away the sin of the day 1 mailing. The legal offense, the disenfranchisement of the rightful owners, was finalized the exact moment those envelopes dropped into the postal system destined for the wrong addresses.
Because the moment it goes to the wrong address, you have stolen that owner's ability to participate. It doesn't matter if your spreadsheet looks pristine on day 5, because the owner of Unit 502 still hasn't received the letter you sent on day 1.
Precisely. You cannot make an unsent invitation retroactively sent. The timeline of data integrity must be strictly linear. First data, then action.
This backward timeline isn't just an administrative oops, though. It is a massive, exploitable vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely.
If a listener is sitting at home right now, realizing their juristic person operates exactly like this, haphazard mailings, delayed registry updates, ignoring preferred addresses, what legal firepower do they actually possess? What specific statutes are being violated here?
The sources outline a very specific legal arsenal available to co-owners. It starts with Section 36 of the Condominium Act. This statute creates a binding, non-negotiable duty for the manager to maintain a current and accurate registry.
So it's not a suggestion.
It is a statutory mandate. Delaying updates until it is convenient is a direct violation of this duty.
So they are breaking the law before they even send the mail, simply by letting the documents sit in a tray on someone's desk.
Yes, but the true weaponization happens under Section 423 of the Condominium Act.
Okay, what's that one?
This section governs the timeline of meeting notices, requiring them to be sent at least 7 days prior to the meeting. But the critical nuance here, the mechanism that courts actually enforce, is that the notice must reach the actual owner.
Reach them. That's a vital distinction. The legal standard isn't just dispatching. The standard is reaching.
Exactly. If the management sends the notice to an outdated address or to the condo unit instead of the owner's explicitly provided corporate address, the law interprets that failure strictly. It is as if no invitation was sent at all.
Wow.
The attempt does not count if the data was flawed.
So if it goes to the wrong place because of their negligence, it legally doesn't exist.
Correct. And we can understand why the law is so strict by looking at the Civil and Commercial Code, specifically the principles of agency. We have to look at the relationship between the parties. The juristic person acts as an agent. Their sole purpose is to organize and manage the property on behalf of the principals, who are the co-owners.
The owners hold the power. The juristic person is just hired to execute their will.
It's exactly. When the agent fails to reach the principal with vital information regarding a meeting, the agent actively strips the principal of their right to vote. This severely distorts the intent of the condominium laws. Those laws are designed to ensure all stakeholders have a voice in the financial and structural destiny of their property.
We keep circling this idea of the meeting being compromised, but what is the terminal legal consequence of all these compounding violations? If a meeting is held based on this flawed data, what does the court actually do about it? Do they issue a fine?
The court doesn't just issue a warning or a fine. The terminal consequence is that the court declares the entire meeting and every single resolution passed within it completely void. not
void.
challengeable, not pending review. A legal nullity. It evaporates.
That is staggering. Let's think about the real-world impact of that. All those people sitting in that room for 3 hours, all the heated debates, the unanimous vote to approve a 50 million baht contract to fix the elevators and the roof, vaporized.
Vaporized entirely. And this is not a theoretical threat. The sources provide a litany of heavyweight Supreme Court precedents establishing this exact standard. We are talking about cases like Supreme Court Decision 1385-2568 and 55-102540.
Let's dive into the mechanics of those rulings. What specific precedents are these cases setting for the listener?
These rulings establish a rigid standard for validity. They determine that failing foundational legal conditions, specifically, notices failing to reach owners due to the management's reliance on bad data renders, a resolution irregular and entirely void.
No wiggle room.
None. Furthermore, an entire cluster of cases like 1253-2537, 2391-2588, 2898-2543, and 430-12559, they all reinforce an interlocking principle. The right to attend a meeting relies entirely on a perfectly accurate or core to registry.
Right.
If a meeting includes ineligible people, like those tenants who were accidentally invited using the tour, 14 or excludes eligible people due to administrative negligence, the integrity of the quorum is shattered, and the meeting is nullified.
So the Supreme Court is drawing a massive, unmistakable line in the sand. They are basically telling juristic persons, do the paperwork perfectly, or do not bother turning the lights on in the meeting room.
They are enforcing the concept that administrative hygiene is the only path to legal legitimacy. And it isn't just judges and courtrooms enforcing this. The sources point to real-world administrative interventions, specifically citing the land office ruling in the River Heaven case.
The River Heaven case. Wait, how does a land office, which normally just handles property transfers, get involved in voiding a condo meeting?
Well, the land office acts as the regulatory gatekeeper for juristic persons. When a condo holds an AGM and elects a new committee, they have to take those minutes to the land office to officially register the new committee's authority.
Oh, I see.
In the River Heaven context, it demonstrates that if the foundational administration of the meeting is rotten, if the invitations were flawed or the registry was inaccurate, the land office can simply refuse to register the new committee.
Think about the cascade of failures that causes. If the land office refuses to register the new committee, the bank isn't going to let that committee access the condo's funds.
Right.
The contractors won't get paid. The entire building grinds to a halt because of an administrative error weeks before the meeting.
Exactly. It proves that administrative failures have immediate, paralyzing, real-world consequences, long before a lawsuit even makes it to a judge.
Yeah.
Regulatory bodies will strike down decisions if the roots of the meeting are poisoned by bad data.
This brings up a strategic question for the listener. Let's say I am an informed co-owner. I've been monitoring the juristic person, and I realize they're using outdated data.
Okay.
Maybe I suspect it's just incompetence, or maybe I suspect it's malicious. Like maybe they're intentionally sending notices to old addresses to suppress the votes of a faction of owners who oppose a controversial new budget. How do I weaponize this knowledge? Where do I take this fight?
The battlefield for this specific type of grievance is the administrative court. The sources highlight that owners can use this exact administrative flaw, the failure to maintain current records and properly notify, as their primary weapon under Section 9 of the Act on Establishment of Administrative Courts and Administrative Court Procedure.
What specifically does Section 912 allow an owner to challenge?
It explicitly covers the neglect of official duty or performing duties with unreasonable delay. If management fails to update the OR Court 2 and sends notices based on old data, they have neglected their statutory duty. When you take this to the administrative court, you generally employ one of two primary tactics.
Okay, what's tactic one?
Tactic one is exposing the situation as a deliberate setup.
Exposing a setup. You mean proving to the court that the incompetence was actually a strategy?
Yes, you present the evidence, the audit logs, the timestamps, the misdirected mail, and you argue that the management team engineered an illusion. They went through the physical motions of printing and mailing envelopes to fulfill the visual requirement of the law while intentionally utilizing outdated address databases to disenfranchise specific targeted voters they knew would oppose their agenda.
That is incredibly aggressive. But honestly, having seen the politics in some large condominium complexes, I can absolutely imagine factions weaponizing the mailroom to ensure their preferred budget passes.
It definitely happens.
But what if you catch this before the meeting even happens? If tactic one is about exposing the fraud after the fact, is there a way to preemptively stop the disaster?
That is exactly where tactic two comes in, which is seeking a temporary injunction. You approach the administrative court, present the evidence of the corrupted data foundation, and you argue that allowing the meeting to proceed or allowing any resolutions passed at that meeting to be executed will result in massive, irreversible damage to the co-owners.
You're essentially telling the judge, if you let them sign that $50 million battle elevator contract based on a vote that excluded 20% of the rightful owners, the financial damage to the rest of us will be catastrophic and permanent.
Yes. And courts are highly receptive to that argument when it is backed by a paper trail showing administrative negligence. If you can prove the OR was not updated, or the preferred addresses were ignored, the judge has clear grounds to hit the pause button and issue an injunction, freezing the juristic person's ability to act until the data is rectified.
This entire deep dive fundamentally alters the concept of what it means to be a condominium co-owner. We are kind of conditioned to believe that our power resides entirely in our vote. In showing up on a Sunday afternoon, listening to the debate, and raising our hand when the gavel strikes.
It's the most visible part, so it makes sense people think that.
Right. But this reveals that true transparency and true good governance doesn't begin in the meeting room at all. It begins weeks earlier, in a quiet back office, with the boring, precise, chronological handling of spreadsheets, land deeds, and postal receipts.
And that is the ultimate empowerment this information provides. Understanding these hidden mechanics shifts the power dynamic from the management back to the owner. You are no longer just a passive resident, waiting for an invitation to slip under your door.
You're an informed stakeholder.
Exactly. You understand exactly how the machinery of governance operates. You know what specific documents to demand. You can walk into the office and ask, can I review the audit trail for the OR? 2. Show me the timestamps for the last 10 updates. Show me the postal registration log for the upcoming meeting.
And if they can't produce it?
If they stumble or if the records are missing, you know instantly that any decision they try to make is legally vulnerable.
It is all about demanding absolute administrative accountability before a single vote is ever cast. And that leaves us with a rather provocative thought to ponder long after this audio ends.
Let's hear it.
If a simple clerical oversight, like a delayed entry in a database, or the failure to check a preferred address box, can legally vaporize a multi-million-dollar condominium decision and entirely rewrite the governance of a building, what other administrative blind spots are you currently accepting as normal in the various institutions that manage your daily life?
It's a really critical question. We navigate our lives relying on the illusion of procedure. In our schools, our local governments, our workplaces.
Oh, absolutely.
We assume the system is functioning because we see the meetings happening and the forms being filed. But the true power and the true vulnerability always lies in the roots of those procedures.
Keep that in mind the next time you drop a form in a box or cast a vote, assuming the machinery beneath you is solid. Question the foundation. Until next time.